His hand gripped the edge of the washing machine for balance, one knee pressing between mine as I sat halfway on the dryer, one strap of my dress hanging limp. I had already whispered we shouldn't, but I didn't move. He had already leaned in, already tasted me. I felt the heat of his breath against my collarbone as he pressed closer, and then he moved deeper. My shoulder hit the cabinet behind me with a soft thud. I didn't cry out. I bit down instead on the fabric of his shirt, on the part of myself that still thought I could walk away. The sound of the washer spinning behind us, mixed with my own shallow breaths. I was already too far in. He looked up at me once, just once, and didn't stop. It wasn't a decision. It was a moment, and I didn't stop it. He's my boss's son. That sentence even now tastes sour in my mouth. His name is Liam. 29. Quiet. Sharp eyes that don't blink when they should. He never looked at me like I was married. Never looked at me like I was older. Never looked away. I'm 37, HR and logistics. 15 years with the company. 2 years ago, I got promoted or demoted, depending on how you look at it, to managing internal affairs for a team run by my boss's family. That's how I met Liam. The first time we were in the same room was a quarterly review meeting. I remember the way he leaned against the frame of the door, didn't even sit. He barely said a word the whole time, but I could feel it attention, without effort, stillness, without apology. And I hated that I noticed it. I went home that day and scrubbed the sink twice, like that would rinse the thought of him out of me. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that I wanted him to notice me again, or the fact that he already had. It started with late emails and elevator rides, and it should have stayed there. But today was something else. Everyone else had left. I stayed behind to fix a billing error. He came back for his gym bag, or so he said. The laundry room off the side hallway was cooler than the rest of the office, and we both ended up there, hands full of files and something unspoken between us. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me. I remember how the buzzing fluorescent light overhead made shadows on his cheek, and how his fingers brushed mine when I tried to pass him the papers. I backed against the counter. He stepped forward once, then again slower the second time. My knees bent before I told them to. My breath hitched when his palm found my waist. And when I felt his chest against mine, I knew we weren't going to stop. It was the kind of closeness that steals logic. Hot, close, terrifying. I still had one shoe on. The strap of my bra never even made it to the floor. It dangled like I did between impulse and guilt. He pulled my head toward his shoulder once it was over. I didn't resist. I didn't speak. I didn't even open my eyes. Because I knew I would see everything I had just done, and everything I had just ruined. I can't say he took advantage. That would make me a victim. I wasn't. I wanted it. That's the part I can't forgive. And the worst part, I didn't even regret it. I'm not proud of that. But it's the truth. He didn't say anything when he left. Just looked at me with that same steady stare and walked out the way he came, like nothing had changed. But something had. Something in me had. The scent of his cologne is still on the inside of my wrist. It smells like cedar and skin, and the part of me that I don't let anyone else see. If you're still listening, if you've been here before, if you've ever made a choice that felt like breathing underwater, then tell me in the comments. Just say I know what it feels like to cross a line you swore you never would. Because I crossed it, and I think I might do it again. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in the downstairs bathroom, toothbrush hanging out of my mouth, staring at the fingerprint smudge on the edge of the glass. It wasn't his fingerprint. It wasn't mine either. It had been there for weeks. But that morning, it was all I could see. My husband was already gone. He left early for the quarterly board retreat, same one he's gone to every year since the twins were born. I had the house to myself. Still, I kept my robe tied tighter than usual. The silence in the kitchen made everything louder. The hum of the fridge, the clink of the spoon against my coffee mug. Even the slow dripping from the faucet felt like it was keeping time with something I didn't want to admit. That moment in the laundry room had already become memory. Already stretched, already shifting. But my body still felt it. Not in a romantic way. Not in a fantasy way. In the way you remember hitting the ground, how your bones know exactly where the bruises are, even if the skin looks fine. I moved through the house like I was being watched, even though no one was there. Every step carried the weight of pretending. I looked at the clock 3 times in 1 hour, but I couldn't remember what I was waiting for. Later that morning, I opened the hall closet to grab a spare towel. A stack of folded shirts tumbled out my husband's, all neatly pressed from the week before. I refolded them carefully, slowly. Like if I made the creases perfect again, maybe I could erase everything crooked inside me, but it doesn't work that way. I know that now. The night before the retreat, I had asked him if he needed anything packed. He said, "I've done this 100 times, babe. Don't fuss." Then he kissed my cheek, not my mouth, and went back to watching something on his tablet. I stood in the kitchen a little longer than necessary that night, pouring wine I didn't want. I've done that more times than I can count. There's something about not being seen that begins to twist you, not all at once. It's not dramatic, it's slow. Like standing in the same room with someone who used to study your face and now just studies their phone. The last time he touched me in any real way was in March. It was cold then. I remember that because the window above our bed had fogged up from our breath, but we never turned toward each other. We just went through the motions. I don't think he noticed I was crying quietly afterward, or maybe he did, and just didn't want to know why. You don't leave a marriage in one fight. You leave in pieces. I hadn't left, but part of me had. There's a notebook I keep tucked in the drawer next to my side of the bed. I don't write in it often, but sometimes, like last night, I do. I wrote, "He looked at me like I was something he didn't want to want, and I still let him." Then I crossed it out. Then I wrote it again. Liam is off limits in every way that counts. My boss's only son, a silent observer in most meetings, never disrespectful, always measured. But there's a way he sees things that makes you feel like nothing you hide will stay hidden. We'd never even had lunch alone. Not once. But there were signs. A meeting that ended 10 minutes late because neither of us moved. A hand that brushed mine when we reached for the same marker. A glance not long enough to be called a stare, but deep enough to make me forget what I was saying. I told myself it was nothing. Just stress. Just me projecting. I've done that before. But last week I was coming back from the print room carrying 2 binders and a thermos. He stepped out of the side hallway at the same time. I tried to maneuver around him, but the thermos slipped from my hand. He caught it. And when he handed it back to me, he said, "You always try to carry too much by yourself." I laughed, but my hands were shaking. Because that wasn't about the thermos. And we both knew it. That line has repeated in my head more times than I want to admit. You always try to carry too much by yourself. Maybe I wanted him to say it. Maybe I was waiting for anyone to see how hard I was pretending everything was fine. Maybe I was hoping someone would finally call my bluff. But I didn't expect it to be him. That morning, as I folded laundry that hadn't been touched since Sunday, I kept pulling one shirt to the top. A pale green polo I had seen Liam wear on a Friday once. It wasn't his, obviously, but the color matched. My hand lingered on it a second too long. I almost laughed at myself. But I didn't, because it didn't feel funny. It felt dangerous. I told myself it would never happen again. I told myself it was one moment, one collapse. I told myself I was still a good wife, a good woman, but none of that explains why I kept the blouse I wore yesterday in a separate hamper. Why I didn't spray perfume this morning. Why I checked my phone 4 times to see if his name would appear, even though I never gave him my number. Guilt doesn't always come with a siren. Sometimes it walks in soft. Sometimes it smells like cedar. And sometimes it waits for you to break again. The office was colder than usual that week. They'd adjusted the central air, someone said. But I felt it in my skin differently, like the walls themselves were retreating from me. I started keeping a sweater draped over my chair, even in the afternoon. On Thursday, I arrived earlier than usual. My hand lingered on the keycard, longer than it should have. The hallway lights hadn't fully come on yet, motion sensors still asleep. When I turned the corner past the break room, I saw him, Liam, standing with one foot propped against the wall, sipping something dark from a thermos. His eyes flicked up before the lights even caught me. "You always this early?" he asked, voice low. Measured. I paused. "No. You..." He tilted his head, but didn't answer. Just offered the thermos. I shook my head. He lowered it, but didn't drink again. We walked past each other without touching. But I felt it, a kind of static. It brushed across the space between us, like our clothes might catch if either of us stopped pretending. In the elevator that afternoon, we were alone again. Just us and the slow hum of machinery beneath our feet. I had files in one arm, my phone in the other. As the doors closed, I shifted slightly and lost grip on one folder. Papers slid to the floor like they'd been waiting to escape. He crouched instantly. Our hands met on the same sheet. Neither of us moved. The paper between us crinkled. My fingers had gone completely numb. When I finally pulled away, his hand stayed on the paper. "Sorry," I mumbled. He didn't answer. Not right away. But as I turned to press the emergency stop button, a reflex, a stupid impulse, he said softly, "You shake when you're near me." I didn't respond. Couldn't. The elevator stopped between floors, a low mechanical thud. No alarm, just stillness. He didn't come closer, didn't crowd me, just watched me from 2 feet away, like that was all he needed, like he knew I'd come undone on my own. "Was it nothing to you?" I whispered. His answer wasn't cruel. It wasn't warm either. It was everything. That's the problem. We didn't touch. Not that time. But it made everything worse. That evening I stayed late again, not for work, just for distance. But at 6:42 p.m., I heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. Slower than usual. Like someone wasn't sure if they wanted to be seen. I was in the copy room. The glass door gave me a partial view of the corridor. I saw the edge of his blazer first, then his reflection on the metal printer tray as he passed the doorway without looking in. But I knew he knew I was there. I didn't follow him, but I didn't pack up either. 15 minutes passed before I left. I walked past the finance corridor, past the HR cubicles. When I turned the final corner, he was sitting in the supply closet door open, one leg stretched into the hallway, staring at a clipboard he wasn't writing on. "You forget something?" I asked, voice light. It cracked anyway. "Yeah," he said without looking at me. "You." My body didn't react at first. Not with shock, not even with guilt, just stillness, like some part of me had been expecting that exact sentence. He stood. The door stayed open. We were barely 6 inches apart. His hand grazed my hip as he passed. And then it happened the second moment. He stopped just behind me, his breath near my ear. Not touching, not moving. I could feel the restraint in his spine. He said I shouldn't be here. I whispered, "Then why are you?" He didn't lie, because I can't stop thinking about how you looked when you let me. There was no kiss, no grab, no push, just the truth dropped like a match in a dry room. I turned to face him. Our mouths didn't meet, but my hand touched his chest, flat against his shirt. I felt his heartbeat, or maybe it was mine. I don't know anymore. I don't want this. I lied. He looked down, then up. "Then why are you here?" I couldn't answer. The moment hung, thick, real. Then I left. I walked away without turning back, but the heat followed me all the way to my car. My hands shook when I tried to turn the ignition. I sat there staring at my reflection in the windshield, lips parted, breath shallow. And I asked myself a question I couldn't escape anymore. If you didn't want it, why didn't you stop it the first time? It was the following Tuesday. Midday heat hung over the parking lot, like it didn't want to move. I had stayed home that morning, called in a personal day. Blamed migraines. It wasn't a lie. My head had been pounding since Sunday, since the last time Liam looked at me like I was something fragile and burning at once. I was folding laundry when he called. I don't even know how he had my number. Maybe from the office contact sheet. Maybe from a day when I didn't care about boundaries. I saw his name flash across the screen and didn't pick up. He texted 5 minutes later, "I left something at your place." I stared at the message like it had fangs. He hadn't. I knew it, but I didn't correct him. I texted back, "Garage doors open." He didn't reply. I didn't need him to. 15 minutes later, I heard the crunch of tires in the gravel. I didn't meet him at the door. I didn't fix my hair. I didn't even put on shoes. I stood barefoot at the edge of the hallway, heart-rattling, hands cold. The door opened. He stepped inside like he'd been here before. His eyes landed on me instantly. I didn't speak. He closed the door behind him, gently. Then he turned to face me, and I didn't move. He walked past the living room, past the stairs, into the narrow mudroom that led to the back patio. It was cluttered laundry basket, half-folded bags from the store I hadn't unpacked yet, a pair of sneakers my husband left behind before his trip. Liam stopped just inside the space. Sunlight filtered in through the side window, casting a gold stripe across his jaw. I followed him. Not fast, not slow, just pulled. He turned when I entered. We were only 2 feet apart. I said, "You shouldn't be here." He didn't argue. "I know." I swallowed. "If we do this again." "I know," he said again, quieter. Then he stepped forward. His hand touched my waist like it had before. No rush, no claim. Just pressure enough to feel real. "I didn't just want that day," he said, voice almost a whisper. "I've been holding this in for years." I looked up, startled. He nodded once, as if to confirm the confusion he saw on my face. "You think this started a few weeks ago?" His hand moved up my side, stopping just beneath my ribs. "I used to watch you in the conference room. Not in a creepy way, just noticing. You always looked like you were waiting to be asked something no one ever asked." My knees buckled slightly. I didn't fall. I just stopped resisting gravity. He pulled me in and I let him. The wall hit my back a second later. His hand was on my jaw, thumb, under my chin. He kissed me this time fully. Messy, unpracticed. Like someone who'd imagined it 100 times and still didn't know where to start. I didn't push him away. My hands went to his shoulders, then his neck, then under the fabric of his collar. I whispered once, "Don't stop." And he didn't. The clothes came off too fast. The silence in the house got louder. The weight of him, the heat, the press of skin on skin, it all came back too quickly. Like we were picking up something we hadn't finished. The mudroom was too small. One of the grocery bags got kicked over. A can rolled beneath us. Neither of us looked down. His hands were rough in the right places, careful where they needed to be. My breath caught in my throat more than once. He noticed, adjusted, held still when he had to. I gripped the back of his shoulder, nails in. He grunted once. I didn't apologize. The moment was ugly and perfect, not sweet, not soft, but so human it hurt. And when it ended, we didn't speak. We stayed tangled like that for longer than we should have, my forehead against his collarbone, his hand still resting at my hip, breathing like we'd both run miles and couldn't admit why. Finally, I stepped back. My legs shook. I used the countertop to balance. He helped me fix my strap, didn't look me in the eye. Before he left, he looked around the space. His eyes landed on those sneakers in the corner, my husband's. He didn't say anything. He just nodded once, a single sharp movement, and walked out the back door. I stayed in the mudroom, still barefoot, still holding one sock I don't remember picking up, and I realized something I hadn't let myself feel last time. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. That night, I took the longest shower of my life. Not because I thought it would wash anything off, I knew it wouldn't, but because I couldn't stand the way my body remembered him. Every place his hand had touched felt louder under the water. The spray hit my collarbone, and it felt like pressure, not warmth. I sat down on the floor of the shower after the first 10 minutes, cross-legged, like a child, arms around my knees. I stayed like that until the water ran cold. Afterward, I put on a pair of pajama pants I hadn't worn in years, too loose now. They used to fit me in a different life when I still felt like someone's wife. When I came downstairs, the house was silent, still smelled like him in the back hallway. Not strong, just something faint and leftover. I opened the window above the sink, even though it was raining lightly outside. I made tea, didn't drink it. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the folded towel in my lap, the one I'd used earlier to dry my hair. My hands were clenched around it tight, like I was wringing something out of me that wouldn't come clean. I glanced at the oven clock. 11:52 p.m. I should have been asleep. I should have been preparing for tomorrow's meeting. I should have been texting my husband back. He'd messaged earlier. "You okay? Haven't heard from you. I'll call in the morning." I hadn't replied. I couldn't, because I didn't know what to say. I opened the laundry basket and started folding, slowly, one piece at a time. T-shirts, socks, a pair of boxers that didn't belong to me, didn't belong to Liam. My husband's, his scent. The fabric felt foreign in my hands. Then I found it, the blouse I'd worn that day. I held it like it was fragile, the shoulder seam still faintly wrinkled from where he'd gripped me. I brought it up to my face, pressed it there. And just like that, the memory hit, the sound of his breath in my ear, the way his knee nudged between mine, the way I gripped the side of the countertop like the world had tilted. I dropped the blouse, almost threw it. Then I pressed my hand against my lower back, right where he'd held me. I stayed like that for a while, not moving, not breathing right. That's the part no one tells you about the echo, the physical memory that keeps calling you back. Not because it was good, not even because it was wanted, because it was honest. Later, I lay in bed with the covers pulled up to my chin. I didn't turn the lamp off, just stared at the ceiling. And then it came the thought that always follows everything. What happens now? Do I tell myself it was a mistake and never do it again? Do I block him from my phone, rearrange my schedule, avoid any project he's on? Or do I do nothing, let it drift, pretend it didn't change me? I thought about my husband again, about the way he used to look at me years ago, like I was something worth arriving home for. Not lately. Lately he looked at me like I was another task on his calendar, and suddenly a line came to me. I don't know where from, maybe from a movie, maybe from something I heard once in passing. What happens when the woman who once looked at you like everything now walks past you like nothing? I used to think that line was about men, but sitting there knees to chest in a marriage that had been hollowed out by time and indifference, I realized I was that woman, and I hated it. The worst part, I didn't know if I wanted to stop, or if I just wanted to stop hating myself for not. Friday morning came with a flat tire and no warning. I was already running late. My husband had gotten home from his retreat the night before, and the air in the bedroom was still strange, like two people sharing a room after someone else's funeral, quiet, polite, distant. He asked if I wanted coffee. I told him I was cutting back on caffeine. He kissed my temple. I didn't flinch, but I felt it, the difference. When I stepped out into the garage and saw the tire slumped low against the concrete, I could have screamed. I didn't. I just stood there, hand gripping the car door, staring like the tire might fix itself if I waited long enough. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Liam. I froze. He was in the driveway, keys in hand. His car was parked behind mine, engines still running. "You need help?" he asked. I didn't answer. I watched as his eyes scanned me, my slumped posture, my hands at my sides, my hesitation. He stepped forward slowly. "I'll change it," he said. "You'll be late." I should have said no. I should have said my husband was upstairs, that I had a meeting, that this wasn't okay. Instead, I moved aside. He crouched next to the tire, his hands working in silence. I stood 5 feet away, arms crossed, watching, holding my breath. Halfway through, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it. A message from my husband. "Forgot to grab the dry cleaning. Could you swing by later?" Followed by another. "Love you. Always." My thumb hovered over the screen. Liam stood up, wiped his hands on a rag from my trunk, looked at me once, just once, with that unreadable expression he always wore when he was hiding too much. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, lied. He stepped closer. Not too close, but enough that I felt him. "You haven't looked at me once," he said. I swallowed. "I can't," I whispered. He looked past me then, at the house, at the windows, and then said, "I know this isn't something you can carry forever." His voice cracked just slightly on the word forever. Before I could speak, we both heard it a creak. The second-floor window. We turned at the same time. My husband was standing there, shirtless, holding a mug, looking down at us. I don't know what he saw, or what he thought he saw, but I know what I felt in that moment, exposed, not for what we'd done, but for what I hadn't done since, for the silence, for the way I hadn't said no again. Liam looked back at me, then said, "I'll go." He didn't touch me, didn't wait for permission. He just walked to his car and drove away. I stood there until I couldn't feel my legs. That night I sat on the edge of the bed and looked through an old photo album, one I hadn't opened in years. There was a picture of me younger, smiling at something out of frame. My husband's hand on my knee. I stared at it until the colors blurred. Then I tore the photo in half and taped it back together. The tear stayed visible. I slid the album under the bed, turned off the light, and lay down beside a man I didn't know how to reach anymore. I watched him sleep, his breath steady, his back turned, and I asked myself one last question, one I still can't answer. Is living with the truth better than lying for love? I closed my eyes and saw Liam's face, not from the act, but from the moment he looked at me and didn't try to stop me from walking away.